Where are you? There you are. There we are. Asher is from Brighton. I met Asher at the Matt Goodwin protest. We were on the megaphone together. It was great. They're an art teacher, artist and community member. They're speaking and advocating as a member of the trans community. Asher is also going to be kindly performing for us at our Love Music Hate Racism gig on Saturday night. So yeah, over to you, Asher. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honour to be here and share the platform with such amazing speakers, so thank you, I really appreciate it. It's a bit long and it's got a lot of information, so I'm going to do my best to get it in 15 minutes. Sorry in advance. Okay, the situation right now. Poor working class people are disenfranchised by our government. People are tired and angry and they feel let down by wet and lacklustre Keir Starmer's Labour. But it's under the guise of change that Farage's reform is gaining momentum in a climate of anti-immigrant, anti-queer, anti-reproductive rights, all under the banner of anti-wokeness. However, people may be connecting with reform. There's no denying it that the pillars of its campaigning are anti-migrant and anti-queer. Therefore, reform represents a political in for individuals who are racist, transphobic, and homophobic. They state, record mass immigration has damaged our country. The small boats crisis threatens our security. Multiculturalism has imported separate communities that reject our way of life. Divisive, woke ideology has captured our public institutions. Transgender indoctrination is causing irreversible harm to children. So what do reform think of trans issues? Well, ultimately I think that trans ideologies are a waste of taxpayers' money. But things do get deeper than that. In 2013, in a podcast, Farage said that Margaret Thatcher's open-mindedness was responsible for today's tolerance in British society. Can you believe? I know, right? Oh. Farage, we're reminded of Thatcher's support for the homophobic Section 28, which banned the promotion of homosexuality in schools, said that was done because she feared some of the very, very extreme left-wing elements within the teaching union, and went on to say, but Margaret Thatcher, in her period as our Prime Minister, was one, I think, of real advancement for gay people in society. They were not discriminated against in the same way that they have been by nearly every Prime Minister before. Can you believe?
No.
No, me neither. Right now, we are living in a Section 28-esque climate of anti-trans sentiment, spearheaded by Reform UK, who aims to set its voters in a opposition to the trans community as if they are somehow not part of and don't contribute towards society. Reform UK aimed to ban transgender ideology in primary and secondary schools and state that transgender indoctrination is causing irreversible harm to children. But the Department for Education has outlined guidance for primary schools on how to approach relationship education, relationships and sex education, and health education. They say, the focus in primary school should be on teaching the fundamental building blocks and characteristics of positive relationships, with particular reference to friendships, family relationships, and relationships with other children and adults. In 2019, the Department for Education made it mandatory for schools to teach about LGBT. Here's what they outline in schools. In teaching relationships, education, and RSE, schools should ensure that the needs of all pupils are appropriately met and that all pupils understand the importance of equality and respect. Schools must ensure that they comply with the relevant provisions of the Equality Act 2010, under which sexual orientation and gender reassignment are amongst the protected characteristics. Schools should ensure that all of their teaching is sensitive and age-appropriate in approach and content. At the point at which schools consider it appropriate to teach their pupils about LGBT, they should ensure that that this content is fully integrated into their programs of study for this area of the curriculum, rather than delivered as a standalone unit or lesson. Schools are free to determine how they do this, but we do expect all pupils to have been taught about LGBT content at a timely point as part of this area of the curriculum. What Reform UK seemed to be missing is that LGBT people were also once children. And I can say for a fact that every single one of us would have benefited from more understanding and compassion in our school environments. Respect and understanding are the pillars of any caring society, and it seems like Reform want to eradicate those pillars under the banner of anti-wokeness. They say they want to protect children, but in the same breath want to out them to their families and others if they indicate any sign of non-conformity. This, of course, is incredibly dangerous for the children living in families where being LGBTQIA+ could put them at risk. I don't feel like I need to say it, but what is trans? So, trans is an umbrella term that encapsulates many gender expressions, from transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, agender, the list really goes on. Many individuals don't feel aligned with the gender they are assigned at birth. Many seek to change it, which could be through hormones, and many don't. There is no right or wrong way to be trans. In the same way, there's no right or wrong way to be yourself. Trans, as a word, is a Western concept. It's a Western term. But there are many, many cultures that incorporate gender varieties, like the Two-Spirit from Native American communities, Fa'afafine from the Pacific Islander communities, and Mushe, which is people largely in Oaxaca, Mexico, and more. And we've always been here, basically, so catch up. Okay, HRT, what is HRT? Hormone replacement therapy is simply a medical process to alter, supplement, or inhibit the hormonal levels that the body produces. It's used frequently by people for a range of reasons, such as in males, loss in libido, fatigue, loss of muscle mass, as well as in females, relieving menopause symptoms and preventing osteoporosis. But it's also used by people in the trans community for gender-affirming treatment, such as treating gender dysphoria and physically aligning one's body with feeling and expression. What are puberty blockers? This is the one you asked me to talk about, so here I am. They are medications that temporarily stop the actions of hormones responsible for physical changes that occur during puberty. They are often used in medical settings for children and adolescents who experience precocious puberty, or who do not want these changes to occur, as in gender dysphoria. In transgender or gender-diverse adolescents, puberty blockers potentially provide time for individuals to explore their gender identity before making decisions about transitioning, or simply not. The effects of puberty blockers are typically reversible. When the medication is stopped, within about 3 to 6 months, the pituitary gland regains sensitivity to GnRH, and estrogen and testosterone production resumes. When people discuss gender affirmation, puberty blockers, HRT for trans people, albeit young or old, they tend to focus on health implications and fear-mongering, as opposed to the positive impact it will already have on many people's lives. The CAS review has been criticised for not having been peer-reviewed, while being used as the basis for a national policy that in March 2024 led a decision that has resulted in the ban on puberty blockers for trans children and young people. We don't think about the long-term health implications from flame retardants in the bedding we use, or the chemicals in the cleaning products, the nanoplastics in our cutting mats or in toothbrushes, or the fluoride in our toothpaste, mercury in our fillings, the chemicals in vapes or the poisoning in alcohol, or even the side effects of pharmaceutical drug industry itself. But we also don't think about the fact of choice, about the fact of expression and becoming. How there is a community of people who, at a young age, understood their insecurity and who they were becoming in relation to the expectations of their genders and their relationships with their own bodies. Most of these individuals grew up in a time where they didn't have the language to articulate their experiences. They then became adults who, given a second chance or another chance, would most likely have taken puberty blockers to more comfortably align themselves both emotionally and physically. To date, little research has been published about the effects of the resulting UK puberty blocker ban on transgender people. However, Natasha Kennedy, who wrote Harming Children, the Effects of the UK Puberty Blocker Ban, published in June this year, concluded after extensive and comparative research into families and their own relationship with gender and puberty blockers. She said, all medicine is a balance of risk, something from which the misuse slogan, first do no harm, sometimes deployed by anti-trans campaigners, seeks to distract. The puberty blocker ban has ignored one side of this balance of risk. which is the absolute certainty of severe psychological, physical, and social harm, scarring the lives of trans children and young people well into the future. Modern medicine already prescribes drugs to children that have known harms and, in some instances, risk quite significant detrimental side effects. In these cases, there is a balance of risk involved. Yet, it is implied by anti-trans activists that trans children should only ever be allowed only medicines that can be shown to have absolutely no negative effects whatsoever, which is a clear and very harmful double standard. Those advocating banning puberty blockers have justified it on the grounds that it is to protect children. The evidence here shows that it is quite clearly not doing that. On the contrary, the ban is causing very significant harm to trans children and young people, and consequently there can be no justification for it to continue. Puberty blockers have been found to be beneficial, safe, and the scientific inquiry, and the ban based on a report that is deeply flawed, which fails to attain the most basic requirements of scientific inquiry, and which has been accused of being biased and having a predetermined outcome from the outset. The evidence Natasha Kennedy illustrates significant harm of the ban, and it is causing to children and young people presents an overwhelming case for ending it immediately, which, as we must remember, is a minority within a minority of the community. Okay. Detransition, we've got big titles being thrown around today. Gender GP state that the concept of detransition is far more nuanced than it is often portrayed. Detransition does not automatically mean regret, nor does it invalidate the identities of transgender individuals who change course. With new research available, especially the 2024 systematic review by Eva Fiegalova, we can better understand this complex issue and contort the myths with evidence. Detransition refers to the process of stopping, reversing, or pausing aspects of gender transition. This might involve halting hormone therapy, reverting to a birth-assigned name or gender, or undoing surgical changes. For others, it may simply mean adjusting their social presentation. Importantly, detransition is not the same as regret. People detransition for a range of reasons, and many eventually retransition, resuming gender-affirming care when their environment becomes more supportive. Fiegalova's 2024 review, we have now the most comprehensive, stratified analysis to date. It found 0.8 to 7.4% of people changed their minds before starting puberty blockers. 1.6 to 7.6% stop GnRHA treatment, but only 1% to 3.8% do so because they no longer wish to transition. 1.6 to 9.8% discontinue hormone therapy, but only 0.5 to 9.8% cite doubts about identity or external pressures. Other studies offer additional insights. A UK study has over 3,000 gender clinic attendees found a regret rate of just 0.47%. A US study involving 28,000 trans adults showed that only 8% had ever detransitioned, and 62% of them did so temporarily, largely due to societal pressure. A Danish national cohort found a regret rate of 0.06% per person year, which is very interesting. Shall I hack? I'm going to hack this last bit. If you want to talk to me a bit about detransition, you can. No, it's fine. I'm going to jump. You're welcome to come talk to me about the EHRC, the Supreme Court and its impact. It is important. You have to come talk to me after. Because I've got someone I want to talk about in particular. This week, on the 20th of November, it was Transgender Day of Remembrance. That is an international day of celebration, but also mourning for the transgender community and the countless people that we've lost, many people who go completely unknown, but also many people who we do know, and that includes friends, family members, siblings. But also on the 18th of November, it was my beautiful friend Tristessa's birthday. She was also known as Joelle, and she was stolen from us in October 2023. And I mean that literally. The NHS had a lack of resources for sure, but what tipped the balance between survival and death for her was transphobia. On the 2nd of October 2023, Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, announced at the Tory conference that there would be intention to not allow trans women in women's wards or men's wards. On the 3rd of October, the very next day, Tristessa went into hospital following a diagnosis of blood cancer, which for the record is very easily treatable with a 91% recovery rate if treated as a medical emergency, and the remaining 9% is often dealing with remission. Upon arriving at the hospital, Tristessa was asked to scale her pain out of 10. As someone who has lived with a kidney transplant, kidney failure, she said it was the most amount of pain she'd ever experienced, and the doctors interpreted her pain 2 out of 10. Yeah. When arriving at the hospital, Jane, her mum, saw that there were plenty of empty beds in both the male and female wards, but there were no beds in the private rooms. The hospital chose to act on the recent announcement by Steve Barclay, preventing Tristessa from accessing any single-sex wards. Instead, she would have to access a private single room. Tristessa was forced to wait 16 days on completely the wrong ward, being denied chemotherapy until she could reach a single patient room on the haematology ward. Doctors would say they're going to move Tristessa into a room, but it would be taken almost immediately. She was waiting for a single room because she was trans. Tristessa pleaded with the doctors to be given treatment. She didn't care whether she was in a male room, a female room, or even the corridor. She just wanted treatment. Tristessa's mum desperately advocated for her, but she was denied care. This wasn't policy, it wasn't a directive, it was something that the hospital chose to interpret. Jane has been interpreting the data following the loss of her daughter. She saw that the cancer markers in her blood were at 504 when Tristessa arrived at the hospital. By day 10, it was 705. Above 750 is dangerous grounds. The day Tristessa finally received chemotherapy, the cancer markers were well above 2,000. Tristessa was othered. She wasn't treated with empathy or respect. She was even misgendered in the doctor's notes. They couldn't even give her that courtesy. The loss of Tristessa is a direct result of the anti-trans climate that we live in, to the extent that doctors wouldn't act on their Hippocratic oath to preserve life because of proposed legislation. Jane is working tirelessly to take on the EHRC. She has been able to acquire legal aid but will need funding to make it possible. This week we're going to be launching a fundraiser, and if you're able to help, either by sharing or donating or spreading the word, whatever, please come and speak to me. I'd love to get an email address from you, and it would be an amazing act of solidarity, not only for the trans community, but also justice for someone who is not a hypothetical number. She's not some kind of thing that doesn't exist. This is a very real individual, a very real person who's lost their life because of transphobia that we live in our society right now. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to cut you short.